Most seed starting failures don't look the same. Sometimes nothing comes up at all, sometimes seeds sprout and collapse, and sometimes seedlings survive but never really grow. And when that happens, it's easy to assume something went wrong randomly. In reality, most of those outcomes come from the same place. Advice that sounds right, gets repeated everywhere, and yet creates problems before you ever see them. Today I want to break down the seed starting myths that cause early failure, mid-stage collapse, and slow growth later in the season. Most of these problems start before a seedling really gets going, which is why the first few myths matter more than people realize. Myth number one, you need seed starting mix. Most seed starting mixes are made primarily from peat or cocoa coir with perlite or vermiculite added to keep them light. They're designed to be uniform, sterile, and easy for seeds to push through. That convenience is why they're sold, and also why they're often more expensive than regular indoor potting mix. But seeds don't germinate because of what's in the soil. They germinate because moisture, oxygen, and temperature line up at the right time. The issue isn't whether a mix is labeled seed starting, it's how that material behaves once it's watered. Many seed starting mixes hold moisture very tightly. And when they stay too wet, air spaces collapse, oxygen levels drop, and roots struggle almost immediately. In some cases, seeds rot before they ever sprout. In others, seedlings emerge and then fall over because the conditions favor disease. A regular indoor potting mix can work just as well, and in many cases, better, because it holds structure more consistently while draining well. What matters is that the mix allows roots to breathe. What you definitely don't want to use is garden soil. Garden soil is dense, it's heavy, and biologically active. And indoors, it compacts easily, it drains poorly, and it creates low oxygen conditions that lead to failed germination, damping off, or slow early growth. Even when seeds sprout in garden soil, roots struggle almost immediately. So the real rule isn't that you must buy seed starting mix. The real rule is to use a light, clean, well-draining medium that doesn't stay saturated, and to avoid dense outdoor soil entirely. Once that's right, a lot of early seed starting problems will just disappear on their own. Once seeds do germinate, though, the next myth usually shows up immediately and it affects what happens right after that. Myth number two, seedlings don't need fertilizer. It's true that seeds don't need fertilizer to germinate. They carry enough stored energy to get started, but once true leaves appear, the plant transitions from using internal reserves to depending on its environment. And that transition point is where the timing matters. When nutrients aren't available at the right time, growth slows down. The leaves will stay smaller than they're supposed to be. The stems are not going to be robust, they're going to remain thin, and roots expand more slowly than they should. The plant doesn't die, it just stagnates. And this is why fertilizer timing matters more than fertilizer strength. Feeding too early can cause problems, but waiting too long guarantees weak early development that no amount of care later on can completely undo. Fertilizer doesn't fix poor light or bad watering habits, but withholding nutrients after true leaves form locks seedlings into a slow growth pattern. The first two leaves that come out on a seedling are their seed leaves. That is still taking nutrients from the seed itself. As soon as you see the second set forming, the first true pair, that is when you need to start fertilizing with a half-strength liquid organic fertilizer. I use something like Neptune's Harvest, Kelp or seaweed, or even their tomato and veg formula. I will link those down below. So once you understand that fertilizer is about maintaining growth pace, not forcing growth, this myth stops making sense. Myth number three, you can't sow root crops in trays. This myth comes from a logical place. Root crops are grown for the root. So the assumption is that anything that disturbs the root early must ruin the harvest. And so gardeners are told that transplanting root crops bends the root, weakens the root, damages the tip, or causes forking, especially in carrots. And because that sometimes happens, the myth sticks. But the issue isn't the transplanting itself. The issue is when and how that transplant happens. Roots don't become sensitive the moment they sprout. Early on, they are still flexible and actively searching. The problems people associate with transplanting show up when roots hit resistance, stall, or begin thickening before they're moved. If a root crop stays in a tray for too long, the primary root reaches the bottom and it turns sideways, or it just slows down completely. At that point, transplanting does cause distortion because the plant has already committed to a shape. But when root crops are started in trays and transplanted while the root is still extending freely, that disturbance is minimal. The plant just simply continues growing in the new soil. So this myth turns timing into a hard rule. It isn't that root crops can't be transplanted, it's that they can't be transplanted late. So myth number 4 is seedlings are delicate. This myth changes how people treat seedlings from the moment they sprout. Because seedlings are small, they're assumed to be fragile. Gardeners keep them warm, still, constantly moist because they're afraid of causing damage. But healthy seedlings are not fragile, they're adaptable. Have you ever tried to pull weeds out of rock hard soil when they're this big? It's difficult because those seedlings are strong. What actually weakens seedlings is being protected too much for too long. When seedlings grow in perfectly still air with constant moisture and no movement, their stems remain thin and their roots stay shallow. They may not collapse right away, so it feels like everything's fine. The problem shows up later. Plants that were sheltered indoors often struggle when they're exposed to outdoor conditions. Leaves scorch easily, stems bend or break, growth slows after transplant, even when the soil is good. That's not transplant shock, that's underdeveloped structure. And the myth isn't that seedlings are weak, it's that weakness is being created by trying to keep them perfectly comfortable. Once you stop treating seedlings like glass and start treating them like the young plants they grow very differently. That same instinct to protect seedlings usually shows up most in how often they're watered. And that brings us to myth number 5. When germinating seeds, it's best to water or mist frequently. This myth comes from the idea that seeds need constant moisture in order to sprout. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. Dry seeds don't germinate, so it feels safer to keep the soil saturated at all times. And that leads many gardeners to mist trays several times a day or water them whenever the surface looks dry. The problem is that seeds don't just need moisture, they need oxygen at the same time. When soil is repeatedly misted or watered, all the air spaces fill in with water. That makes oxygen levels drop, especially around the emerging root. Germination may still happen, but root growth slows almost immediately. Frequent misting also encourages roots to stay near the surface, where moisture is constantly available. Instead of growing downward and outward, roots remain shallow and underdeveloped. And later, when watering becomes less or they're moved outside and the sun dries up the surface of the soil very fast, those shallow roots, they struggle to support the plant. So seeds do need evenly moist soil. In the beginning, if you properly hydrate your soil before you sow your seeds, which means wetting it enough where you squeeze it and it stays in a ball, but it doesn't squeeze lots of water out of it, that is properly hydrated. And if you have that level of hydration, it should stay moist long enough for germination to happen without daily misting or watering. The surface may dry slightly, but deeper moisture is what matters. Once watering feels under control, Light is usually the next thing gardeners try to get right. So, myth number 6, seedlings need direct sunlight from the start. This myth comes from the idea that sunlight is always better than artificial light. Gardeners place trays in bright windows or sunrooms because it feels natural and free, and in theory, sunlight should be ideal for plants. And to be clear, it can work if you have a true south-facing window that delivers 8 to 10 hours of direct sun day after day, with enough space to keep the seedlings close to the glass. You can grow strong starts that way. The problem is that very few people actually have that setup. Most windows provide bright light for part of the day and indirect light for the rest. And to our eyes, the space still looks sunny. But to seedlings, the signal is inconsistent. Window light also just comes in from one direction, which encourages seedlings to lean and stretch even when conditions seem good. At the same time, sunlight through glass can raise temperatures quickly without increasing the usable light. And that pushes plants to grow taller instead of sturdier. Nothing dramatic goes wrong, but growth quality suffers. And that doesn't mean sunlight is bad. It means that while direct sun can work in very specific setups, relying on window light alone usually creates uneven growth that's hard to correct later. Early on, seedlings benefit most from light that is steady, close, and predictable. Once they're established and introduced outdoors gradually, natural sunlight, of course, becomes an advantage instead of a limitation. Even with great light, though, timing can undo everything. Which brings us to myth number 7, days to maturity means seed to harvest. But in most cases, days to maturity doesn't begin at sowing, it begins at transplant. And that single misunderstanding throws off the entire seed starting timeline. When gardeners treat that number as the full lifespan of the plant, seeds get started too early. And seedlings then spend too long indoors sitting in containers that are slowly becoming too small for them. During that extra indoor time, the roots hit the edges of the cells and growth slows and structure begins to suffer. Stems thin out, leaves stay smaller than they should. The plant is alive, but it's no longer growing at the pace that it needs to. None of that looks like immediate failure, but by the time the plant is transplanted, it's already behind. And even though it might look healthy on the surface, from that point forward, the plant never quite catches up, and harvest is delayed or reduced later in the season. And that's where seed packets create confusion. Days to maturity is meant to help growers plan harvest timing once a plant is established in the garden. It's not a guide for how long a plant should live in a tray or pot indoors. And that's why timing tools that calculate start dates based on your actual location are so useful. They help match indoor time to transplant readiness instead of relying on a single number that was never meant to do that job. And that is exactly why we developed our GardenGuide.com. It's going to help you with all that. It's free, and it's very soon going to become an app. So I will leave a link down there below. When plants struggle despite good timing, fear usually takes over, and that's where the next myth comes from. Myth number 8, you must sterilize trays before sowing. This myth usually comes from a fear of disease. Gardeners are told that if trays aren't sterilized before sowing, seedlings will immediately fall victim to fungi, bacteria, or damping off. And that fear leads to bleach solutions, long cleaning routines, and a lot of unnecessary stress and time before seeds even go into the soil. Here's the reality. I have never, ever personally sterilized a seed starting tray. Ever. That doesn't mean cleanliness doesn't matter. It does. But there's a big difference between reasonable cleaning and full-on sterilization. Most seedling problems blamed on dirty trays are actually caused by growing conditions. Perfectly sterilized tray with soil that stays too wet will still grow weak seedlings. On the other hand, trays that are simply brushed out or rinsed clean, filled with fresh soil, and grown under good conditions rarely have issues. Once seedlings are growing well, disease pressure drops dramatically, with or without a sterilized tray. Myth number 9, heat mats are required. Heat mats are often presented as a must-have tool for seed starting. Gardeners see them recommended everywhere. I recommend them. And assume that without one, germination will be poor or uneven. And that belief leads people to run heat mats under every tray for every crop, from sowing until transplant. The reality is much more specific. Heat mats help when soil temperatures are too low for germination, particularly for warm season crops. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant, they benefit from warmer soil at the moment of germination. And in those cases, a heat mat can speed up sprouting tremendously. Once seeds have sprouted, you may or may not need the heat mat anymore. If you're growing indoors and your indoor air is fairly warm, that doesn't mean that the soil that the roots are in are that same temperature. Usually it's much cooler. So I personally leave my heat mat on low. It's great to get one with a thermostat. On low for at least until the second set of leaves, the first true set of leaves have come out. And at that point, the heat mat can be done. Where you never want to use a heat mat is with cool season crops. Lettuce, brassicas, onions, and many greens, they naturally prefer cooler soil. That is why when a cabbage goes to seed in your garden and drops all of its seed everywhere, those seeds don't come up until fall when the weather cools down again, because they're programmed to skip the heat. So if you've got heat mats on under your cool season crops, they're just going to sit there until it gets cooler, which will be when you turn off the heat mat. Used briefly and selectively, they're very helpful. Used continuously or universally, they create imbalance. The most common mistake isn't owning a heat mat, it's forgetting to turn it off when it needs to be. Once you understand that heat is a germination tool, not a growing requirement, it becomes easier to decide when it belongs under a tray and when it doesn't. And once tools and techniques get locked in, the last myth becomes the hardest to let go of. Myth number 10, if it worked once, it's a good method. This myth is one of the hardest to let go. When something works once, it feels proven. A seed tray grows well, a season goes smoothly, and the method gets locked in as the rule. A method that worked once may have succeeded because conditions happened to line up, not because the process itself was solid. Good seasons hide weak systems, and challenging seasons expose them. This is where many gardeners get stuck. Instead of examining timing or structure, they keep repeating the same approach, hoping conditions will cooperate again. When you understand how timing, light, temperature, moisture, and space interact, you stop asking whether a method worked before, and you start asking whether it makes sense for the conditions you have now. That's when you really become a gardener. Once you stop treating past wins as proof and start treating them as data, seed starting becomes predictable instead of stressful. I think out of all of these myths, the hardest one for people to grasp is lighting, especially when it can come at an extra cost. But if you click this video right here, I'm going to show you a grow light for literally every budget. I'll see you guys next time.